Anyway, so hello, Jason.
Hi, Stephen.
Thank you so much for joining us. Just before we talk about the film, remind us who Tyler Clementi was.
Sure. In 2010, Tyler Clementi was a freshman at Rutgers University, and he was cyberbullied by his college roommate, who live streamed Tyler in a private sexual encounter. And shortly after that, Tyler died by suicide. And remember, this was in 2010, long before social media has grown to what it was today. I recently just had the anniversary of my joining of Facebook on 2009. So Tyler's story really took the nation and continues to, not just in what happened and why, or because we believe Tyler was targeted because of his sexual orientation, but because it was one of the first horrific examples of what can happen with cyberbullying, and sadly so many others have and continue to suffer and even die as a result of cyberbullying like that.
Yeah. So give us a snapshot. What's the mission? What's the work of the foundation? What are you tasked to do?
So Tyler's mother and father, Jane and Joe, are our co-founders. And our mission is to end online and offline bullying in schools, workplaces, and faith communities. And we have several ways that we do that: through public education, like the conversation that we're having right now, through our Day One Bullying Prevention Program, which is a simple and easy way for schools from elementary through universities, workplaces, churches, to help their communities make a commitment to stop bullying before it happens and to be upstanders when it does. Upstanders being people who, instead of just standing by and watching what happens or passively participating, stand up and intervene when safe directly and/or access resources to help someone who is being bullied.
Okay. You were very generous in sharing your own personal story with me. Would you be willing to share a little bit of that here this afternoon?
Sure. You know, my career has been in public service and particularly advocating on behalf of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender populations. So my connection to the agency is also far more personal. I started experiencing religious-based bullying when I was 13 years old, and that was when my mother and stepfather, I was raised in a very strong fundamentalist household, first sent me to what's often called ex-gay or conversion therapy. And I had heard my whole life, and certainly at that time in church, that even though I really didn't even understand what gay was, I hadn't been given any context to it, that there was something about me that was so inherently wrong, so inherently evil, that, you know, God would destroy an entire city and turn people into pillars of salt, as was interpreted for me. And eventually that continued from age 16 to 19, and then my family ended up kicking me out of the house when the conversion therapy didn't work when I was a teenager. And through that time as well, I was also bullied in school. Again, long before I even came out, you know, my behavior was perceived to have been because I was gay. And there was very little support, so much shame around it. And so now also, my husband and I are in the process of adopting an 11-year-old boy. And he's being bullied in school in part because he has two dads. So this issue has been and continues to be very personal for me, and I'm honored to be able to do this work as part of the foundation.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about the PSA itself. Tell us a little bit of how this came about, who was involved, it is remarkable how much is packed into such a short video.
Sure.
Talk a bit
well,
about the
full
film.
Credit goes to Monica Lewinsky and the Be Strong campaign. We've, our co-founder Jane has built a relationship with Monica, who's been a great friend, not just to the Tyler Clementi Foundation, but also in the broader movement to end cyberbullying. And this is one of a number of projects that we have been proud to partner and help to promote. So she approached us to see if we would be interested in being a part of helping to get the word out about this PSA. And it's just incredibly powerful. It's hard to watch and not get choked up. And for me, what stands out, not just in what was said, but what goes on the screen at the end. If this is not acceptable in real life, why are we allowing it to happen online?
What's your answer to that? It was a great question. Just curious to know if you've had thoughts about how to answer that question.
Well, I think as happened with Tyler's experience, people lose a sense of the decorum, their moral centeredness, their sense of responsibility when they go online and experience this very perceived, but certainly not in reality, anonymity. And they, on the perpetrator side, they are disconnected face to face from the person that they are affecting. And on the side of the person being bullied, it also becomes impossible for them to disconnect. We know that, for example, Tyler spent a lot of time looking at the tweets that were made about the live stream over and over and over again, and seemed to lose touch, lose contact with the world that existed outside of that. And it's one of the things that makes cyberbullying so dangerous.
Let me push back a little bit on the issue of anonymity. I was at a wonderful event UNICEF, GSMA, and Microsoft put on just a couple of days ago, and there was a woman there, I'm afraid I can't recall her name, someone in the audience will remember, who created the blog Muslim Girl.
Okay.
After 9/11, what was it like to be a Muslim girl in America after 9/11? And she used the power of anonymity for herself as well as for others connecting with her and telling their stories that they wouldn't have told if they had to use their real names. So anonymity is a two-edged sword?
Definitely. I think in the case of what we saw in the PSA, individuals who can hide behind a screen name use that as a way to distance themselves from whatever it is inside of them that would prevent them from doing that face-to-face.
Right. All right. So, as today has progressed, we've been doing an awful lot of exploring of ideas and concepts and policies. I think we're starting to get to the part of the day when we ought to start thinking about what steps, what actions can we take as individuals, as organizations? What steps can we take to counter the kind of behavior we just saw depicted in the video?
Sure, that's a complex question, but let's start with a couple of different things. So one of the things that we did was partner with AT&T, as they have partnered with you on this conference, to on a project that eventually created a video, There's a Soul Behind That Screen, which was based on a nationwide contest for high school students to create videos about their experiences with cyberbullying. And what AT&T found that was created was that it was they created an initial cut of the video, showed it to students, and saw that it really didn't have much of an effect because they were living this every day. They were already focused on it. That really the video was great to educate parents. And that speaks to the notion that we have to create materials that reach out to the different audiences affected and educate them about what's happening, how they can intervene, and what they can do to protect themselves and their children. When it comes to the young people affected, we found that our Upstandard and Day One programs have been highly effective in helping to empower youth through taking a pledge amongst themselves, through hearing leadership and power, for example, a school principal state unequivocally that bullying and harassment in school for any reason is not allowed, and that walk them through some steps so that they know ways in which they can intervene directly when they see someone who is being bullied and offer friendship and support, ways to recognize when it's not safe for them to do so, and how to identify who to go to, and ways that we can collect information to understand the impact that is having. And what we hear from principals, from residence life administrators across the country is that the act of taking a pledge, of committing from day one to be an upstander and help is a critical part. It's not the sole answer, but a critical beginning to helping to address this problem.
So we're here in Washington, as you can see,
Yes.
and I'd be curious to know if you or the foundation have any particular things or steps you would like government to take in this space?
Sure.
That can be a straightforward no, you don't, or it could be more nuanced than that.
Yes, we do. In fact, introduced in Congress earlier this year was the Clementi Higher Education Anti-Harassment Act, which we would love to see become law. And
talk about that.
What it does is just state that bullying and harassment on college campuses based on sexual orientation, gender identity is not allowed, and it sets forth provisions around monitoring of that and potential consequences if that isn't addressed. We don't, unfortunately, we think in the current congressional climate, that's not going to move right away, but it's a great opportunity to educate our elected officials about what's happening, particularly at colleges and universities, and build a foundation for being able to pass once there's a more favorable climate.
Right. You've mentioned AT&T. There are other technology firms represented here, many of them doing remarkable work. What more would you like to see the tech firms, the platforms doing in this space?
Well, I think that we need to move social media away from kind of Wild Westish into a more safe environment where steps are taken to help prevent the kind of cyberbullying that we see that affected Tyler and that we see in this video. One of the things that I'm really interested in getting involved in are online gaming platforms, which I think is an area where there's been the least conversation and the most challenge, because those platforms are on a number of different networks, a number of different companies, you know, like other social media, involve people all over the country, involve direct voice-to-voice conversations versus text-based conversations.
Right.
And we see and have heard a lot of cyberbullying is going on, and that there are next to zero steps put in place by the companies providing those platforms to help prevent tragedies from happening that could result.
Interesting. We have educators here in the room. What can schools do? What can teachers do? What can educational authorities do to better tackle this issue?
So I've already mentioned the Day One program.
Right.
I highly recommend you download that, but let me tell you a personal story. When I was in high school and being forced to go to XK therapy, I often had to wait after hours for my mother to come and pick me up to take me to my appointment. And one day I was kind of wandering down the halls, getting ready to leave, staring at the ground, and a assistant principal saw me that I had seen but never met. He asked if we could talk. He said it looked like I was really depressed and sad. And that moment created a connection where I found someone in authority who I knew cared about and was concerned about me and advocated for me in school, and created a safe but also monitored environment for me to talk about things that I couldn't talk about at home, things that weren't safe to talk about. And at that point in my life, that was the lowest, where there was a night where I sat and just sort of pulled different medications out of the medicine cabinet and thought that that was the time to end my life. I didn't, and it was because of people like this principal and other school teachers who helped me understand that there was hope, that there was safety outside of a home or a church that wasn't safe. So never underestimate the power that you as educators, administrators have in changing the lives of the students that you're working with in ways that you may never fully understand.
Wow. That might actually segue into my last question for you, which would be, what one thing would you want us to walk away from this evening, having heard you? Oh yes, Jason said that. What is that one thing?
Well, I'm going to cheat and say something new, which is don't repeat, delete. Don't repeat, delete. And you know, every morning I wake up, and perhaps like all of you, one of the first things I do is pull up my social media feed. And I can't tell you how many of the people whom I connected with, and obviously we're friends, so we share similar values, spend so much time on social media sharing horrible things that people who are bullying say. Tweets that come from elected officials that are hurtful, news stories or press conferences or videos of people, saying horrible anti-LGBT things like you saw in the video. And we sort of throw them out there in shock and awe and horror. And I don't understand why it is that we give people who are doing such hurtful things such free space and sharing to continue to hurt other people, including us. And so I would love for everybody, starting today, to remember, don't repeat, delete. When you see something hurtful and horrible, thank you. The way to deal with it is not to share it on your feed so that everybody sees it. And if you see it come up on your feed, use whatever service is available to hide it so that those things disappear, because there already is so much hurt and harm going on that we don't need to support that. We don't need to provide free social media airspace to people who are saying things are hurtful. So hashtag don't repeat, delete.
Excellent. Are you with us this evening? Are you going to stay for the reception?
Yes.
Folks, you'll have a good opportunity to come and talk to Jason one-on-one. Thank you so much for your work. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Stephen.
Jason, everyone.